So it's like using common sense when you're developing content, when you're developing copy. Like, when we're writing copy, when we're talking to people, when there's a structure to a sentence, there is a flow to a paragraph, introduction versus conclusion. That's how you want to think about that when you're using best or those other types of terms. It really gets in the common sense and how you would naturally talk to somebody. And that's why Google kept saying natural use of keywords versus keyword stuffing is where I think SEOs were going, right? They were like, oh, well, they're referring to keyword stuffing. Don't keyword stuff. Yeah. Not necessarily, right? So that's why you do want to step back and just look at, am I meeting the common sense need for this copy?
Welcome to Endless Coffee Cup, a regular discussion of marketing news, culture, and media for our complex digital lifestyle. Join Matt Bailey as he engages in conversation to find insights beyond the latest headlines and deeper understanding for those involved in marketing. Grab a cup of coffee, have a seat, and thanks for joining.
Hello, listener, and welcome to the Endless Coffee Cup podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening to us. I've been amazed over the past few months of just how much listenership has been increased. And so if you're sharing the podcast, if you're telling others about it, really, thank you so much. You've been doing a lot to help us grow. And I'm looking forward to delivering some more great content in the future. And as part of that, Ashley's back with us today. How are you doing, Ashley?
I'm great. I'm so excited about this topic.
Well, I can tell you emailed me about an idea and just to see where I was. And I think I emailed you back in about 10 seconds saying, I love it.
Well, you know what got me started with that is that you posted one of our older podcasts on SEO. And I wanted to listen to it because I remember us talking about something with keywords. And I thought it would be good to send to a client. And I heard your enthusiasm when we were talking about it. I want to say it was that podcast. I can't remember if it was that one or the AdWords one. But I wanted to talk about this because there's just so much that's going on with keywords.
Absolutely. I love keywords. And even now when I'm teaching any form of digital marketing, whether it's SEO, paid search, even social content marketing, keywords and keyword research are a foundational part of the training because I'll make the statement. If you're going to do any amount of digital marketing, I don't care what channel or what format it is, you have to have an incredible depth of understanding about the keywords in your industry that you're trying to target. Absolutely.
You have to understand search intent. It's not just about how many times have you gone into a company and they have search terms in mind and you find out that that's not really how their audience is searching or it's not really appropriate for that product even. So like understanding the intent behind why someone would even use that term and if that even makes sense is really important.
Well, and today is significant because just a few days ago, Google started blocking the ability to see keywords in your paid search account.
Yep.
Some are saying 20%, some are saying almost 30% of the keywords people are searching on are now being hidden, and advertisers can't see those keywords that are generating clicks or views of their ads. And so
but
wow, what timing.
I know. I mean, yes, that sucks, but I'm always going into the keyword planner anyways. You do want to see what's bringing up ads so you can optimize your ads. But I think that you could still get an idea of what people are searching for by using that keyword planner. It's free and they haven't made any really a lot of changes on that. So
I think my beef with this is, so I was running a campaign for someone and it's the negative keywords. That's where I look at those keywords that are driving visits to through the paid search campaign. And you can always find certain words that people have searched on that resulted in a click.
Yep.
But when you look at that word, you know what? There's a word there that we should not have shown up for that word. And so now I have to take that word and add it into my negative keywords. Well, I can't see those now. I can't screen that out. But Google still thinks it's relevant because I can see other words that I've add to negative keywords. If they take that away, now I'm extremely limited in being able to curate the words and also say, I don't want these words. But that's one thing as an advertiser, you can't always know is what the negative words are going in. It's something you almost have to learn during the campaign.
Gosh, that is such a good point about those negative search terms. It honestly makes me think, was this done on purpose so we'd spend more money?
I think anything Google does has the intent of making more money.
Yeah.
Just bet on it. This is the company that tested 10,000 shades of blue for the link in a paid ad.
That's true.
To see which one would result in more clicks. So I think any change they went from 2 headlines to 3 headlines. Why? It results in more clicks. So any move, any major shift is designed to increase revenue. I mean, that's 80% of Alphabet's revenue. Right.
So they have a business too. So you do have to be careful for those who are listening and are getting calls by Google reps. They don't necessarily, you should share
I've
your
gotten
story.
A few, yeah.
I mean, they don't necessarily know. You'll get some good ones. I mean, I have gotten some good ones. But they typically don't know as much as, myself or, someone else who's at an organization working on ads.
Oh, absolutely. No, they know enough, I think, for the small, medium-sized business owner or the single-person shop. They might know a little more than them. But I think anyone who's been in paid search for more than a few years and has had training, they've got more knowledge than your average Google rep.
Yeah, and that's why you really want to be careful following their advice. I know one time I got advice to run, dynamic search ads, and it really didn't make sense for how this site was even being set up. Because as you know, with AdWords, you look at your website structure and if that makes sense. So this really didn't make any sense. But you'll even see like some of the same suggestions that the ad rep is calling to give you in those recommendations, right? So in that optimization score. So don't get suckered into that either.
That optimization score is such I had one recommendation that I can get more impressions if I open up my ads onto the network. No. Because I know what'll happen. And at that point, I told him, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're trying to get more money out of it. And you've got a script you're following. And but the thing is, anyone who's been in this business knows if I'm going out on the network, that's more impressions. It's less click-throughs. It's going to drop my CTR.
Yep.
You've seen it enough, but now I have a Google rep telling me to do this. So immediately, it makes you very cynical about the process.
Yeah, and they'll actually put into those recommendations keywords that you should add. And they're not really looking at the ad group and how you have that structured. I have a friend that was just taking the recommendations, and one day, so she was just asking me some advice, and so she was talking about how she's just been, I love those recommendations. They're great. I just been accepting all of them.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. And she said, but I'm running out of budget. I don't know if this is good. And she said, like, you know what? I love her because she just went for it and just figured it out. And I mean, she is like a sponge. So when we were talking, it's like, oh, you really want to get rid of those lower quality keywords. I mean, she had probably 900 keywords in this. Oh, it was bad. And not the budget to support it either.
This is physically painful to hear.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is.
I'm in mental anguish.
I know. And I shouldn't even be laughing, but it was
sweating.
Funny. It was well, because the thing is, how many times have you been handed an account and you've seen something very similar?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Where you could tell that, they were just learning or they didn't really know. And then there's all these keywords in one ad group.
Or an agency set it up and just threw 100 keywords in it. And one ad group, one ad.
Yeah, they didn't care. They're like, whatever. If they bid on it, they bid on it. They don't. Versus thinking that you want to, be smart about how those dollars are being allocated daily. And that's how you want to be very targeted. I know this isn't about, AdWords, but we are talking about keywords. So whenever you're grouping your ad groups and you're putting those keywords within those different ad groups, they need to be as specific as possible.
Right.
And I know that, that's not what Google does when they're giving you those recommendations per se. You can even be bidding against yourself because some of those keywords might be in other ad groups. So then you're wasting even more of that budget. So why spend money twice, right?
Well, you're bringing up a good point that these keywords are being recommended in the optimizer, as I'm doing air quotes. Now, where are those keywords coming from? Where are these suggestions coming from? And you brought this up. AI. If this is how
that's
if
how
the
this all
recommended
came up.
keywords are coming from Google's AI, I'm not impressed.
No, well, and that's the thing. It's still like a little finicky. It's buggy. I know. I know. I'm being nice. Well, because the thing is, there's an algorithm that's there's a couple algorithms now that have AI.
Yes.
Weaved into it. And, artificial intelligence is looking at the meaning behind the search. So it is looking at search intent, but it's actually kind of annoying for myself because once Google started doing that, I was having a hard time finding things and just doing a organic search, for something on a white paper that I was writing.
Right.
And I would go to Bing as a result because I was finding stuff a lot faster because I could just depend on my keywords, right? But they're looking at why are they using this keyword, and they're actually guessing based off of your search history and what you're doing if you can't find something. So it takes a lot longer to find what it is that you're looking for. So it is buggy. Over time, I know that, Google's hoping that changes. But, I think relying on tools that utilize artificial intelligence is a mistake right now because it's still in development.
Well, and part of it is the recommended keywords that I'm seeing, I've already excluded because they're not the product I'm selling. They're related, but they are very different. And the nuance is being missed. It's like Google wants you to use a big club where I'm seeing paid search as a surgical knife, that I have a specific niche of the market with a product and these are the people I'm trying to appeal to. And so I'm trying to carve out just this group of people that this appeals to. But Google is handing me this big club going, oh, you can reach everybody with this. And no, I don't want to.
Right.
Because I see what happens when I do that.
Right.
My click-through rate goes down. My quality score goes down as well. And I spend more money and get less results. And so I'm not interested in being handed that club. And that AI seems to carry that mentality of this brute force. We're going to handle this industry. But it goes back. I even see this in business listings on Google My Business or Google Local, whatever you want to call it. Especially where we are. Big manufacturing area. And lots of little manufacturers who do very niche, specific work. And you try to use the business categories that are set up. Doesn't always fit.
No.
And there's a few manufacturers in the area where I feel like we're constantly fighting because Google will automatically slot them into a business category that is incorrect. And we have to keep going back in and changing. And then a month later, we'll get an email. Did you mean to do this? No, I didn't mean to do that. And so it's funny. Google is a search engine that added on business services. And it replaced the Yellow Pages, which seem to have an understanding of niche, target manufacturing areas, and that's how they would describe it. And Google's had to learn that. But a lot of it, I feel like, these are software engineers, and they're trying to come up with categories that catch everything, but they don't.
I also think that just the way that they run business isn't good, because I don't think that, when you call to speak to a Google Ads rep, right? Like, you can get through for advertising, but not for Google My Business or, anything like that. It takes a lot longer. You have to wait for them to respond. And I think that they're trying to be as disconnected as possible so you can rely on their help center, find that article. And it's just, you're not going to find an article that answers every freaking question.
Well, and now they're diverting a lot to partners.
Yeah.
People that are, official Google representatives or ads agencies. And so a lot of that's being diverted off and now encouraging you to work with another agency, rather than go direct. And so that's, yeah. And, some of the licensing, some of the certification that goes along with that, sometimes I think is more technical. Mm-hmm. It focuses more your technical ability as an agency to do things, but not the marketing knowledge, know-how, experience. And so now you have to figure out what kind of agency you want to work with and if they're able to handle what you want to do. But I'm not sure that, from the big picture, the AI is not ready for prime time.
No.
I see that in categorization. I see that in recommendations. And so for now, when it comes to just SEO, I don't think we can rely on we can rely on AI. It's still learning. It's still in its infancy. But I look back to, the last time Google took away keywords, 2011.
Oh,
2011. Google took away organic search keywords. Anything that was done in SSL disappeared overnight. No more. And now you get the not provided. Well, to me, that was criminal, because from an agency standpoint, for all of our clients, we could look at, I could tell you the conversion rate difference between a singular and a plural, between the word used with one other word and the effect that had on the visit and the conversion rate, and the word used in this phrase. We were breaking down intent into very mathematical approaches for our clients because we could see that keyword data.
Yeah.
And there's a massive amount of difference between someone who searches for singular and plural.
Yes, there is.
But then take away keywords. But in Google Keyword Planner, singular and plural is the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then you start seeing full concepts being merged into the same thing. So now, as an optimizer, as a marketer, I somehow have to forget all of that and deal with the subject rather than knowing if people find me for the plural, I've got a 10% conversion rate. So, and it was a mathematical process that if I know I get 10,000 people to this site, I know I'm going to get, 800 sales, and this is how much it's worth, and that keyword is gold, and we'll also bid on it. To me, it made me want to spend more and do more to take advantage of that when you would find those pockets, when you would find those, we just called them keyword gold, when you discovered that. And now that's gone, and now this seems to be going away as well.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's the people's approach to it. I don't know. You should never remove keywords from your SEO or from your SEM strategy, period.
No, absolutely not.
And unfortunately, I have been hearing some arguments from people about how, and it's kind of...
You're always tuned into the arguments. I love it.
You know what?
You're bringing me the news of what the industry is saying.
Because it's interesting to me. Well, I love to talk about this stuff. So I'll talk to other people within the community, or I'll just hear other things on forums or whatever. But it's because of artificial intelligence, people are thinking that, well, now we don't have to worry about being very specific with our keywords. Right. It could be more. So now you're getting into just writing a bunch of copy for a web page. So I'm thinking about that example that you were talking about in one of our previous podcasts about how you had a client that was just writing a lot of copy, but she was ranking for stuff and she didn't realize it. Even though she was ranking for that because she's a fabulous writer, that doesn't change the fact that she needs to be strategic with her content if she wants to rank for more of those money-making type terms and phrases.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, because she was just a great writer, and she used headlines, subheadings, all the structure she utilized. To her, it just made sense to do it.
Yeah.
So all I had to do was give her a 5-minute, hey, here's how to SEO. And all of a sudden, then it went from great to amazing because now she's incorporating that. but she already understood. It was, I don't know, I just think some people are just great writers. They're able to intuitively figure that out
Yes.
with markup, with content, and that helps. Majority of people are not like that.
No, they're not. And that's why I'm really kind of astounded to hear this argument come back up. It's almost when people were saying when content marketing was coming out and everyone was like, oh, you don't need to, SEO, it's dead. It's not around. You don't even need to look at it.
Yeah.
Just write a bunch of stuff. And then it started popping back up. That's why I think it's interesting going to different conferences that are big into content marketing. And now all of a sudden you'll see breakout sessions on Google Analytics and SEO. Oh, so now you see. See, it's important, right? But the thing is, it's not going to go anywhere. Keywords are still important. You still have to put it's almost like our conversation last week or whenever that was about the funnel.
Yeah.
When we were talking about at the end of the day, you have a process and that goes into your funnel. The funnel may change like shapes, sizes, whatever, but you still have a process. You have a sales cycle. So you still need to evaluate that. So it's almost like this. You still have a strategy that you have to put together with your digital marketing. So you need to make sure that you do evaluate how people are using the web.
If you're enjoying this episode on keywords and keyword research, then you'll be excited for this offer. Using the promo code in the show notes, you can get 25% off a new subscription to WordTracker. I use WordTracker for all of my keyword research projects, and I highly recommend it for the data, easy interface, and helpful tools. Again, use the promo code in the link for 25% off the regular price. To take the next step, I've also placed a link to my LinkedIn Learning course on keyword research, and that'll help you become an expert in no time. I saw a study a couple months ago. I'll have to find out who did it. But they were saying that more than 50% of content marketing is never engaged with. To which I yeah. Because,
how is it done? That's how I want to say
right,
it.
because
Right.
the SEO community for years has been saying content. And from conferences, people, oh, you got to write content. And every time I hear that, I cringe because I think of someone
what is
years
content?
ago.
Let's talk about content.
Someone years ago, they heard someone say, well, you've got to write a lot of content. And they said, oh, no, please. Can we have good content? Not just content. Can we have good content?
Strategic placement of content.
Yeah, and that's what
can we have that?
keywords help you to do. I mean, when I had the agency, we would get a new client and we would spend almost a week on keyword research.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just keyword research. It was, okay, now that we have the keywords, how do we slice and dice and view the keywords in different ways? And a lot of that was because people learn differently. Some are more visual, some are more tangible, that the more I work with the words and see them in order and change it around, I'm going to make connections. And that's what we would do. It wasn't just, let's get a list of the top 1,000 keywords.
Right.
It was, let's group them into categories.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's look at consistent phrases being used with a word, and we would call it the pivot word.
Mm-hmm.
Now, usually it was a core keyword, but of that pivot word, what words typically come before that word?
Right.
What words typically come after that word? And we'd create like this matrix based on demand,
Mm-hmm.
and you would all of a sudden start seeing these phrases come together, and it would give you an understanding, especially if you had a 1,000 or 10,000 page website. Well, now I have hundreds of phrases that I've developed a matrix from, that when I have to create a page title for this page, I can look at this, pull the relevant phrases, pop it in, and
That's nice.
it made it so much easier. But also at the same time, we're looking at Google Trends, we're looking at
Mm-hmm.
other measurements, and we're putting together connections with calendar events, with holidays, with their own calendar for their business. We're looking at analytics and getting what I called a three-dimensional view of keywords. It would guide us in how to optimize pages. It would guide us in creating a content calendar. It would guide us then in what questions people are asking and what content would be valuable to them.
Yeah.
And how do we present that content? do we present it in an article? Oh, 500, 1,000 word article. Oh, people
yeah.
love those.
Don't forget about that.
Or do we
word
do it
count.
in a video? Do we do it in a graphic? How do we present it? So all of that keyword research wasn't just to find what's the most popular keyword, which is, I think, what a lot of people view keyword research as. What's the most popular keyword? Rather than digging in and understanding the breadth of the keyword industry for that particular application.
Yeah. I think too, it's like you have, I want to say it's HubSpot, but you know, the keyword clusters. So they are grouping those keywords and they're looking at that content, trying to help people to think strategically about it. But the thing is, this is stuff that's not new.
Right. No.
It's really not. It's actually been around for a long time. Unfortunately, it's just that the SEO community has consisted of maybe more like technical people that couldn't really, speak up and talk about like this other side when it comes to content.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's been really happening. And I know you and I spoke that when you're an SEO, you need to be able to sell. You need to be, you have to have other types of skills.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just sit behind a computer, write, or, create a sitemap or whatever. You have to have a lot of other skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's happened is that SEO used to be a lot more technical, right? And then you get into the content piece, but the content piece was harder to fight, especially when you have more of these like introverted type computer people, right?
What?
I know, I hate to say it, but I'm going to go into the stereotypes. But right. But then you get HubSpot that comes along and they're all about the content and inbound marketing, which inbound marketing does involve SEO. Mm-hmm. So they're bringing things up that people are like, oh, wow, that's so cool. That's new. No, it's really not new. It's actually always been out there. Mm-hmm. So that's why if you have to look at your content strategically, and it starts with your foundation, which are keywords, which makes up a paragraph, right?
Well, no one's reading paragraphs anymore. So there's, right, and to your point, it's not just the writing of the content, it's the arrangement of the content.
Yep.
How well do you understand HTML and markup in creating a page that can be scanned? I think the last measurement was on 1,000-word page, people might actually read 18% of it. And then the retention rate after 2 minutes is almost nothing.
I'm that person. I'm a skimmer. I don't really read the page. I'm always in a hurry. So I'm going through it. And I'm not even going to lie to you. I'll start from the bottom sometimes and work my way up. I know, because I'm looking for terms, though.
But if I put the right keywords in the headline subheadings, bolded in the bullet points, I've reinforced what this page is about. And the 18% that you retain, it's going to be the keywords. Mm-hmm. But also, what's so critical, and what I'm so surprised that people don't understand, is the concept of progression. That you've come to this page, it's optimized. I'm making it so even if you're skimming, you're seeing my keywords. But I haven't developed the page with progression in mind. And by that, I mean, what's the next step? Mm-hmm. If I answered your question, what's the next logical step? Do you need more information about this? And so over here, I'm linking to related articles. Do you need to compare something? Yeah. And now I have, because that's a mid-funnel research type activity. So now I'm giving you a tool to compare pricing or compare features. Or are you ready to convert and buy? Now I'm offering you. So I think a lot of times people develop these pages for search, get people to the page, but then forget the concept of progression, of moving through the funnel, of moving to that next stage. And how do I invite you at the conclusion or in the middle of the article to move to that next stage?
That's why I like to look at content as developing a relationship.
Right.
It's relationship building. You're having a conversation with somebody. It's just on a different platform. And you're not talking to them per se, right?
Yeah.
Not with your voice, at least.
Well, and this is where integration into your larger website and understanding progression, I think. Here's a great example. So a number of years ago, my hobby, because I need to get away from the computer once in a while, I was rebuilding a 1964 Volkswagen Beetle.
Oh, wow.
Love that car. I don't know why I sold it. Well, I do.
I didn't know you were that handy with cars.
I'm not. I'm not at all. Oh, no.
Man, I should have let you look up my tire that day.
I'm not handy at all. I bought it because I wanted to learn. Because
wow. That is ambitious.
Oh, my dad, when I was young, my dad was always, you got to learn how to do this. And,
oh, wow.
You know, and I'm standing in the garage looking out the window. And
I know.
My brother was learning. I was not. So I wanted a car. I love Volkswagen Beetles. So I did a lot of work to this thing, but then it ended up sitting for a year or two. I was busy. Now, driving through town and my brakes went out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm slamming on the brake. Nothing's
I guess
happening.
It's good I didn't have you look at my
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's people stopped ahead of me. And so now, fortunately, I kind of kept my head. I downshifted and popped it. And then I did the Flintstone where I opened up the door, put my foot out, and then I had to push it off to the side. And then call my wife. Come pick me up. Bring the trailer.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and she's laughing about it. Well, and I get underneath the car, and the problem is this little thing in my whole brake system just popped. And I look it up, and it's a $3 part. $3. I go to the websites that I normally buy stuff from. They're all out of stock. So I can't even get it replaced. I can't do anything. 2 hours later, after visiting another one of these websites, I get an email. Brake systems on sale.
Oh my gosh.
20% discount on brake systems. And I'm looking at this going, wow, that is cool. That's amazing, because I did a search for a brake part that was not in stock, which triggered an email for an entire brake system. And that was set up as a rule within their system for any of their customers. And I talked to them later about it. The funny thing is, I sold them the system that did that. That's
so funny.
And so, yes. And then, you know, and we worked on developing these rules. And now it's happening to me. And I'm laughing. I'm going, that's wonderful. Because now I go talk to my wife and I say, hey, look, you know how the brakes went out? You know, the safest thing would be to replace the entire brake system. Oh, you know, now we're talking from a $3 part to a $500, complete overhaul. But that, to me, that is an understanding of keywords. Mm-hmm. That even though I search for this very specific product part, the keywords knows that's a brake part. Let's send a brake offer.
Yeah.
And so this system was, and it's just rules. It's not AI. It's just rules. But it's effective because now when you understand your audience, when you understand what they're trying to do and what the intent is, do you want to fix that part that broke for $3, or you want to change the whole system and ensure safety for you and your family?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
I'll
a
take
no-brainer,
safety.
right?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. Oh, let me write that check. But that takes an understanding of keywords. And a lot of people bought this system, but they had problems setting up the rules to make it work right because they didn't understand the keyword progression. They didn't understand their own users and how what one search would lead to another product sale. Because what's the intent? The intent is fix my brakes. Well, it's just how you're going to fix them.
I know. I mean, I will say I feel for the marketer that's in that situation because I have been in this, and you've been in that situation where you're trying to talk to the stakeholders about like, hey, you know, I don't think these are the right terms. I think that we need to do some research here and just kind of figure it out because, and you can eventually see that within the data, right? Like you may start with terms that you have just a hunch that this isn't right from what you're hearing and what you know. You're like, you know what? There's no use in arguing with anybody. We'll just start them. Let's just start them. And then you notice that you're not getting, you know, those clicks, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're getting the clicks and nobody's converting because the terms they might look and get like, oh, what is this? But it's not really fitting their need, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of misleading. Yeah. So, you know, really looking at that, right? And evaluating it. And I have been in that situation multiple times where you try to get that buy-in because, you know, sometimes like doing that research takes a little bit more work, right? And you have to work with, we were talking about the sales team during our last podcast, and they are your subject matter experts. They deal with the customer on a daily basis. You do want to talk to them and understand the customer more as a marketer when you're setting these things up.
Yeah. What I don't run into much anymore is the jargon issue. That used to be very, very consistent.
It depends on the industry.
But yeah, and especially, like I said, around here, it's manufacturing, and jargon is huge.
Yeah.
They'll call it one thing, but people are searching for another. And so I don't run into that as much, but once in a while you see that, and it's like,
I was actually running into that last year, but when COVID hit, a lot of people, their priorities with, their marketing dollars went a little different. But yeah, I was seeing that a little bit last year. But you are right, it wasn't as prominent as it used to be.
Yeah. So yeah, the latest Google updates, I think BERT, Hummingbird, and some of these are more AI oriented and trying to, I know BERT it's trying to associate synonyms or phrases. One phrase that I always use an example is skinning a cat.
Oh gosh.
That there's a literal interpretation.
I hate that phrase. I am like queen of the cat ladies.
So I have to tell you, I was in France speaking at a conference, and there were 3 of us Americans speaking there. And one of the other presenters loved to use euphemisms. And he joked about it, but we would sit and count how many he would make. The problem is you're speaking in France, and euphemisms they don't translate well. Many people don't understand what you're saying. And in middle of a marketing talk, he presents something, and this is what we learn, because there's more than one way to skin a cat. And immediately I look over to the translator, because they had booths with professional translators, and she looks up with big eyes like, whoa, okay, I've got to translate that. And then I'm sitting there just smiling, looking around. I'm waiting for the translation to hit the people with the headphones on. And they start looking at each other like, what does killing cats have to do with this? And so that's, I think, like,
it's an awesome example.
That's what Bert's trying to figure out.
Yeah.
That, are we killing cats? Are we, or is this an expression, and what does it mean? Mm-hmm. So a lot of AI is trying to work through those things. Now, I think the purpose is much, much bigger than just search for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
There's great application with that. But at the same time, and I've seen some examples where it has gotten better for those types of searches over the years, that there are just phrases or words in a particular order or context that mean something unique to a certain group of people.
Right.
And they don't translate well. Anyone to see it wouldn't understand it. Now, does that absolve you of the responsibility to write a good page of copy?
Exactly.
Absolutely not.
Well, and this is the thing. I love AI if it's being leveraged within some, keyword research tool, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's just going to help you. And to group those keywords potentially. I mean, you never know, because we were just talking about how it's a little finicky or whatever term you want to use. Like, it's not totally there yet. But I think having it in software is great to help you do your job better. But you don't want to remove your foundation of your house, or your house is going to crumble.
Well, people use the example that, if you're talking about quarterback, coach, sideline, stadium, what else? Fullback, running back. You're talking about football, but you're not using the word football. And to which I kind of respond, why wouldn't you use the word football? It's natural that, you will use other terms to support your main term, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't use the main term at all. Yes, you need context to build around it. The problem is when you get SEOs involved, and it's American football is a football game that's played on a football field, and in the game of football, there,
I know,
when an SEO gets a hold of it, we're jamming that word in anywhere. No, you do rely on synonyms, context, additional words, but you still need that foundation.
Yes.
And you can't neglect it. And now I think the pendulum is swinging the other way. that first it was, use the word as many times as you can. And there were, best practices has always said use it in context. Well, now it seems to be swinging over where people are saying you don't have to use the word at all.
No, and my thing is
And
use
that's
some
a straw man
common
argument.
sense,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's almost like I'm thinking of those terms at, school near me or something, that those terms you may not necessarily use verbatim in your
Mhm.
copy. Now that is where I can see, oh, okay. So you're not going to use that verbatim, but you may use a mix of that. So
Yeah.
you could still show up
Mhm.
for that term. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you disregard the other stuff.
Well, here's something that's come up. And in one of my training classes, I was showing just Google searches and how it works. And we use the term best. And actually, what I searched for was webcam. Webcams. And what came up in the results, best was used consistently in the top results. So the class started questioning, well, why is best showing up? And I was trying to explain, well, I'm doing a general search of webcam, mountable webcam or remote webcam or webcam for meetings. And I said that's a general search. And so consider the buying mentality, the intent. I'm looking at the broad market of webcams and I want to see what's available. So the word best is most likely going to attract my attention because it's comparing different models.
Absolutely.
But what the class was starting to, well, can we use the word best in our copy? Can we use the word best on our website? How do we optimize to show up here? And then I had to explain to him that, well, if you're doing a comparison, then yes, you can say, what are the best webcams of 2020?
Right.
What are the best webcams that'll make you look amazing? If you're comparing, if you're analyzing, but to use the word best on your website without supporting information such as awards, recognition, reviews, let those reviews or recognitions do the speaking. But if you're going to use the word best, be very, very careful. Google doesn't like that, and nor do other people.
Right.
So there's a specific nuance to these things.
So it's like using common sense when you're developing content, when
Yes.
you're developing copy. Like, when we're writing copy, when we're talking to people, when there's a structure to a sentence, there is a flow to a paragraph, introduction versus conclusion. That's how you want to think about that when you're using best or those other types of terms. It really gets into common sense and how you would naturally talk to somebody. And that's why Google kept saying natural use of keywords versus keyword stuffing is where I think SEOs were going, right? They were like, oh, well, they're referring to keyword stuffing. Don't keyword stuff.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, right? So that's why you do want to step back and just look at, am I meeting the common sense need for this copy?
Well, and it's interesting. So I sat in on a storytelling workshop today.
I'm jealous.
Well, a good friend of mine, he was teaching it, and I brought him in on the session. And so, yeah, I've heard it a number of times, but I'm still fascinated because so much of it has to do with making a good presentation.
Oh, yeah.
And he's distilled it down into what he calls PHD, picture, headline, description. That you need to create a mental picture, or if you're writing, you can use a picture, but you still want to develop that in your writing. You want to have a clear headline,
Right.
a statement that grabs someone's attention, a metaphor that expresses emotion or empathy, and then a description or detail that will support what you've said. And I'm explaining to the class, this is exactly what we do in SEO. Picture, headline, description. It's social media, picture, headline, description. That you apply that in so many different areas. And that's a key to good content, is telling a good story. And what he did when working with people through their stories, they would make a first attempt. He would refine that with them. But he would also hear in that first attempt certain words that they would use. And then he would coach them to, now let's take what you did in 2 minutes, let's bring it down into 40 seconds. And I want you to talk about that and use that word. And this phrase was key. Now, retell it in this way. And so then They would reformulate their story using those words, but then they would say other words sort of the second, third time through that would really clarify it. And yeah, I think that's why we have a glut of content online right now. People are just throwing words out there. Some are trying to tell a story, which is great. Some are refining it 3 or 4 times. And as they refine it, they find, oh, this word, this phrase, now I'm making a connection. I'm providing some empathy. I'm clarifying a metaphor. And in doing so, you create better words. You are truly working to understand your audience and the problem they have and how can I solve it, or at least put them on the right path. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm such a fan of just organically, consuming keywords. And as much as AI is going to help us make correlations.
Yes.
And that's where I think it's going to really stop for a while. It's going to create correlations that people who search for this look for this, and that's great. But what I don't think what AI is going to do for a long time is understand, okay, now what do I do with this information?
Yeah.
How do I apply it? That's where the person comes in. That's where the SEO, I think the new realm of the SEO will be, what do I do with that correlation? How do I apply that here?
That's like that right now, though, even with data. People talk about, just being overwhelmed with all the data that's out there, which is why a lot of people like AI, because it's going to help simplify that data and understand it, right? Because really technology at the end of the day should always be about efficiency. Mm-hmm. That's why you should never forget your strategy and that human element. And that human element is going to be the brain, the strategy, understanding the business. So you can't really replace that with machine learning technology. Mm-hmm. That is for efficiency.
Right.
So, and understanding your data. And, oh gosh, I forgot where I was even going with that, Matt.
Well, there's a base level that AI is going to get you so far.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going with it.
Well, and that's what I find so fascinating, especially in data and analytics, trying to teach people that the reason why you hate analytics is because analytics only gives you information.
Yeah, you have to interpret it.
Right. And which means you then have to come with a question. What are you trying to solve? Then you get the data, you get the clues. You've got to approach analytics like Sherlock Holmes. Mm-hmm. Have a problem first. And then you find the clues. You put the clues together. And that now, does it meet your first assumption or your first, I think about scientific method. What's your proposition? Mm-hmm. Does it agree with that? Or do you have to go back and ask a new question?
Yeah.
It's that same level. Even AI and analytics is going to tell you, AI, I think a lot of people when they approach it, they think AI is going to do things for them and solve problems for them. To some degree.
That's taking efficiency to another level.
AI is going to find the patterns.
Yes.
Faster and more efficiently with bigger sets of data than we can do. Now, the pattern's found.
Now, I will say, I know we're getting into a little bit of a different area, but, AI, obviously it's being used in chatbots. But, I know there's some concern about AI taking over the sales process.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I personally feel about that.
Yeah,
right?
It'll be interesting to see who fires AI.
I know,
if AI gets fired over a
yeah, well, I think I remember somebody said something to me about how we have the technology today and this is where you're going to need to speak on this because I'm not a car person, but like for cars, like self-driving cars, mm-hmm. and that there's a lot to do there with technology and mm-hmm. AI, and they're not doing it because, at some point the human element will stop the development, just because there's no need for it to get to that piece. And I am probably butchering what this person said, but I thought I thought it was a pretty valid argument.
Yeah.
Because we do want society to still have a role and be able to make rationalizations that
Right.
AI is not going to be able to do.
Well, as a former and I guess sometimes current salesperson, and I was joking with someone about this the other day. When you're in sales, your job is to make promises that production can't deliver.
Oh, geez.
Of course we can do that, and then you go back and, hey, guess what we got to do? I've just
I know, you
told them we
better
can do
figure
it.
this
So
out.
figure it out.
Yeah.
AI won't do that.
Yeah.
And there's so much, and we talk about this all the time that there's an art and a science.
Yep.
And the mixtures tend to change. And how much then can machine learning learn art appreciation? Can it quantify that? And so there's always going to be that human element, because I think, no, it's not going to be able to quantify it, because it's going to depend, and we get back again to how it was programmed.
Mm-hmm.
Great study came out, and this was with a database of images. I think it was ImageNet or something like that. And I think it was a Google property, where it was based on tags of hundreds of thousands of images. However, of this database, I want to say even maybe millions of images, 90% of the images had been tagged by the US, UK, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you searched for wedding, what you saw in the images were traditional Western, the bride wearing white, the man wearing a tuxedo. When images of Asian, Chinese, Indian weddings, it was labeled as costume.
Oh,
because
geez.
90% of the data came from Western countries.
Wow.
So immediately we have a bias in the data,
Yep.
because, and while they said 90% of the ratings or of the tagging came from the US, that's 3% of the globe population. And now we start adding in all these images, and wow, we need more tagging data from the people that are underrepresented in this database.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one of the main inhibitors to AI, is that breadth of data across multiple cultures, multiple languages, multiple people groups, as to what do you call this? And are we biased when we don't have that data from that group of people? Because now it's labeled as something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so inherently, based on where you get the data, what data set this is, where you're pulling it from, there's going to be some level of bias to it.
Oh, yeah.
And that one was a powerful example of how a small group of people could affect a large database, and how things were I want to say hashtagged.
Yeah,
how they were
but
labeled.
that's really data 101. I remember learning about that in my statistics class when we were talking about sample sets and analyzing data and seeing what was truly considered to be accurate
Mhm.
and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to find some of those flaws in data.
Mhm.
And we learned about that, at the very beginning.
Yep. So and that's the thing. We're dealing with language.
Yeah.
Language is and that's what I know. The Google not even an algorithm; it's a program, I guess, but more. It's dealing with the nuance of language and how
Mhm.
language changes all the time, and there are new words developed. New words are used in different ways, and so that's part of the fun, I think, of online marketing and just being a part of this world.
Yeah.
Is seeing the amount of language change that goes on. And great example, I was teaching Google Ads to a class, and this was like they'd never seen it before, and it was an international class. We got hung up because I was talking about ad rank. Now, when I talk about ad rank, what do you think of?
Well, you're talking about keywords and quality score, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how
It,
ad rank affects, you have quality score with ad rank, and that computes to how much you get charged
yeah, exactly.
per click, right?
Yeah. Yep.
They got confused because as I'm explaining ad rank, they're like, well, wait a minute. Don't you want your ad rank to be number one? And I'm like, well, no. And they're like, but when I do a search, I want my ad to be number one.
Oh, yeah. Well, clients ask that, right?
So here we have, and I'm like, you're right. The correct word is ad rank for where my ad ranks on the page, but it's being used in a calculation called ad rank where it's 1 to 20, 20 being the highest. And
Yeah.
They caught that. The only reason we caught it, it was a language discrepancy. And all of a sudden I'm realizing we're using the same word, but they're seeing rank on the page. I'm seeing quality rank. And we had to change the language moving forward so they understood what exactly I was talking about and how that affects the. But here it is, even within Google, we're using the same word. It means two different things
So funny
in
you
these
said that.
different calculations.
I was having this conversation actually yesterday with somebody over Facebook advertising. Like I was just going through because I see it all the time, and we're getting slightly outside of keywords, but
No,
it's
this
just
is keywords.
it's
It's all keywords.
Well, it's like basically customization, so customize audiences and how they use it, and how like if you're creating an ad, if they thought, well, a customized audience, that's what I want. Yeah, I totally want it. Well, no, I mean, these are basically saved audiences. I mean, yeah, not yet, but yeah, right?
Right.
So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and even within our own industry, I am amazed at how many words and phrases we have. When I'm teaching, and that's the thing, I've been doing so much now overseas, and I'm teaching them about spidering. Oh, we also call it a bot. Oh, we also call it a crawler. We also call it's a software program.
Yeah.
But we call it a spider, a bot, or a crawler. And just they're looking at me like, what are you even saying? But I'm trying to explain to them these terms because when you go online, you start reading articles about SEO, which you will, you're going to encounter this language.
Oh, yeah.
And how we have 10 terms for one concept. And same thing. Google calls it an index. It's a database.
That's why it's actually really hard because, they didn't teach this in school, right?
Right.
Like I didn't learn SEO or SEM in school. Like I learned it on the fly. I was contracted at an agency, and that's how I started to learn some of it. And I just remember there would be many times, Matt, I would be crying at my desk at home thinking, I don't know what this is. But, you just have to die. Like, that's why I commend you in your Beetle situation because, you just bought it and figured it out, right? And that's really what you have to do as a marketer these days. I think a modern day marketer is somebody who's going to sit down and just figure it out because things are constantly changing and moving. And in fact, I'm dealing with it right now on a couple things that once upon a time they used to be this way and now they're not. So you have to constantly teach yourself stuff. But I remember when I was first getting into it, just being so upset because I didn't understand any of the terms. Mm-hmm. It was hard for me to self-teach because there's a lot of terms for one thing. Mm-hmm. And, unfortunately, when you're just diving in and you're learning, not everybody has time to sit down and say, okay, honey, we're going to show you how to do this from A to, B or whatever. Like, you don't have that luxury. You have a bunch of online articles to read and try to figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what's funny. The industry that does search engine marketing still cannot decide on what search engine marketing means.
Oh, I know. We talked about that in one of our podcasts, right? Like I put a lot of stuff under that a lot of people don't. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one of those terms. It'll be different based on who you talk to.
And that's why when you see it on my website, I talk about it in terms of PPC and AdWords, and because that's really how most people use it, right?
I use it as a catch-all.
Well,
I use it to describe everything you do with a search engine. Yeah.
But not everybody does.
No,
actually, I think
true.
most people use it the other way.
Yeah, for paid search.
Yeah. So that's why on my website, I use it for paid search because I know
really?
that's
interesting. See, I'm just a stick. I'm just going to use it the way I think it should be used. And I'm not going to ever change.
I wonder what that look was for. Yeah, I'm okay with just conforming. Hey, I want that traffic, Matt. That's what I want.
I'm a firm believer when it comes to that term. Even when people are searching for it, they don't know what they want.
No, that's very true, right?
The intent is unclear.
Well, you should always have a discovery meeting anyways.
Yes. Well, listeners, you can tell, I think you can tell we're winding down here and just getting a little punchy. Keywords, we'll probably sit here for another half an hour talking about keywords and stories. I hope story time here has been very good for you. And maybe you've learned something about keywords today. And the one thing I would tell you to take away is don't neglect keyword research.
No.
It is, I have said, it is the most important thing you can do in digital marketing. It affects all areas: search, social, paid social, content marketing, inbound marketing, content calendaring, whatever you want to do. Keywords are a foundation to that, and you cannot neglect that.
Right. I agree.
Oh, thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
After an hour,
I'm finally
we're in total
on the same
agreement.
page, right?
Nice. Listener, thank you so much for tuning in. And please share the podcast, let others know, or, even rate us. It really helps. And thank you so much for the time you spent with us. And look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Endless Coffee Cup podcast.